Hello and welcome to today's webinar on more click-through and more engagement. My name is Mike Fradkin and I'll be your host today. Before we get started, I want to mention this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website as well as our YouTube channel at a later time. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to enter those into your question panel as we'll be answering questions at the end of the session. With me today is Paul Terry. Paul is one of our longest tenured optimization consultants. We're also joined by Jim Rushforth, one of our top optimization solution engineers. This webinar is part of a weekly series we've been holding for the past 6 weeks. Each week we've focused on a different optimization and personalization topic, and we've shared lessons we've learned working with our customers that we thought valuable to pass on. If you've missed any of the past webinars, you can find those video recordings on our website or on our YouTube channel. With that, I'm going to hand things off to our optimization consultant, Paul Terry. Paul.
Thanks, Mike. So today, guys, we're talking about click-throughs and engagement. And this is a great topic because that's really what it's all about, right? I mean, no matter what you're doing for your website, whether it's lead gen, whether it's e-commerce or anything, you always wanting to have engagement. You want users to use your site to accomplish their goals, to accomplish your goals, your combined goals. So click-through and engagement is really what the whole thing is all about. So let's look at some of the main themes here that we're going to be talking about. You want to be an honest broker. You want to have your users' best thoughts in mind, right? You want to be honest about what your goals are and what your customers' goals are. You want to be an advocate for what they want to accomplish. You always need to have in mind, what does my user want to accomplish and how am I going to help them accomplish it? You want to be direct. You want to be honest about it, right? Your priorities. You have a lot of priorities on your site. You want to convey information. You want to get interest. You want to have the user on your website get that lead accomplished, make that sale, right? And you might have conflicting priorities within your own organization. That's generally true. But you have to have your priorities straight, and they better align with your users' priorities, and you better present it that way on your website. Because if you don't, the user is going to move on quickly. They're going, as soon as they're lost, as soon as they're confused, as soon as they're it doesn't look like what they want to accomplish is available on your site, you stand a chance of losing them. And so the best way is to be direct, be honest, be open, and to make sure that that user knows that you're on their side. You want them to accomplish what they've set out to do. Again, that's why we meet in the middle. That's why we have a website, and the website has to accomplish both of those goals. Okay, let's look at the next slide, and we're going to start looking at some of these categories. So, this one I'm sure you know, and it kind of sums up a lot of these. An SEO, SEM landing page has to be what is expected. If the user searched on whatever keyword they searched on, whether it's apartments or grills or paint or decorating ideas, when they land on this page, it better have to do exactly with what they were looking for. You don't want to have some other landing page that you really prefer them to see. Let's let them Google something and then they land on your site and it's something different because you think that's a better landing page. It's not. It's not. So that's that whole thing about an honest broker, upfront communication. You want that continuity of trust. Okay. Content consumption on your site. So again, and I've seen this over and over and over again, don't hold your punch, right? Put what the user wants, you know what they want, put it right there front and center above the fold. The thing that they're looking for most, right? Not what you want to push, but what they want. That's the honest broker I'm talking about. And you want to measure what they consume. Do they scroll down? Do they, what pages are they looking at? So that you can understand if you're accomplishing your goals with their needs, right? You can encourage consumption, encourage scrolling on a page with an anchored navigation bar or straddling content over the fold. Techniques to, you want to make the presentation correct for them, correct for their device, whether it's a smartphone or a very large 4K monitor. You need to understand what that is. You need to understand what the presentation is going to be for this user, and make it so that they can easily know what's below the fold, know what's on the other pages, know what's there, and then navigate them, again, fulfilling their needs, right? Fulfilling your needs. You want to meet in the middle. But be real cognizant of, if you as a designer of the website were standing over their shoulder, you were the salesperson gently off to the side, there to serve. That's the role you play. And you have to, as best you can, have each individual user's expectations met. Okay. And if you have to explain in too many words what the next steps are, if you have to have a paragraph explaining what your organization is all about, and you're requiring the user to read a paragraph to understand what's going on here, then you're not doing it right. Right? It's got to be quick. It's got to be direct. Offer something in return. For example, if and this is usually more on lead gen than e-commerce, but offer a white paper, offer an industry survey, something that you've got that they might be interested in. It sets you up as a leader, as a thought leader, an industry leader, and it's something that you can generate once and then provide to your website users, right? As an incentive to get them to go deeper into your site. Give them something, right? Okay, let's look at the next slide. Widgets and controls, widgets and gadgets. Oh my, right? So I have a little personal take on this, but it's also a lot of exposure to a lot of bad controls, widgets, and gadgets. So keep them simple. Keep them on the larger side. As we make things easier to use, we make them simple. They don't get in the way. We don't want the way people use our site to be in the way. Engagement means easy to use. If a software engineer designed your site, you probably should have somebody else do it. Engineers love complicated controls. Users typically in the world don't. They get in the way, right? Drop-down lists. If they have a lot of items in the drop-down list, then okay, maybe that's what you need. But if you just have 2 or 3 options to select from, don't make them drop-down lists, because that really kills discovery. If it's just a select one and then you have 2 options under it, don't make that a drop-down list, right? Make it clear, make discovery options so that the user can use the site to accomplish their goals. Don't hide it. When you're searching, search refinements, you want to put those, the most popular ones up front. Add item counts. Again, give the user more information on the screen so that they don't go down a wrong rabbit hole, because as soon as they go down the bad rabbit hole, if they search on something that doesn't exist, that's not good. You don't want them to do that if possible, right? You want to make an easy, and it's harder to do this. You've got to do more work. You've got to do more work, and you've got to test a lot of options here, right? But again, it's all about making it easy. Clarify what you want to happen and meet the user's expectations. Okay, next slide. Calls to action, right? Just some things to think about here. Succinct and actionable, right? Front and center. This is our next step. This is what the user wants to do, and here is the method that we provide to do that. Add to cart is the real simple one, but there are a lot of others. Test multiple variations on these words. The wording, test multiple things. Right? Always, whenever you're trying to test any kind of a call to action, definitely test 2, 3, 4 different variations. So you can triangulate the tone, the wording, the messaging, the intent, so that you can understand what best connects with the majority of your users, right? And then beyond that, personalization. Find out who they are compared to the other users and tailor your site where it makes sense. Red means no. I know that's obvious, and people are like, oh, we're not going to test colors. Well, I'm telling you, red means no. Be careful about having red calls to action for something you want somebody to do. It's a mental block people have because they see red means no all the time. Don't be cute. Don't be subtle. Be simple and direct. Right? Calls to action should always accurately reflect the next step. And this is subtle. It's back to that landing page concept. When you're searching for something in Google, and if you're looking for apartments in Phoenix, you want to take them to a Phoenix Apartments page, not your search page, right? That's a real simple example, but there's a lot of variations on that. And calls to action have the same thing. If the call to action is find the best deals, when they click that button or that link, that you should take them to something that says your best deals. Again, you want to nip any confusion in the bud, and make it simple and make it direct. Support the calls to action with backstop messaging and images. What does that mean? Well, the obvious one is you can trust us. We have a return policy. The Better Business Bureau or some other organization really trusts us, conveys that trust to our users. You know, you're going to take this next step with us, whatever it is, and we have convincing messaging, whatever that is, that says we can be trusted, right? So these are about backstop messaging to calls to action. Okay, the next slide. Let's talk about heroes. Our heroes. Carousels are great. You can swirl by a lot of information with these hero carousels, but be careful about putting too much in there. Be careful about on the third or fourth hero, probably most users have moved on. Make sure you understand what those are, right? You can measure that. Measure how many heroes users see. And if the second or third hero should probably be looked at, but is not, move it out somewhere else. But again, you can measure all of these things. Measure the amount of heroes users see, which ones they see, and whatever that hero is supposed to accomplish, test whether it has been accomplished. So just a little caution there. Make links obvious. A lot of times our designers get in the way because they want it to look really nice and don't want obvious calls to action. But subtle calls to action that are kind of fade into the background don't get clicked on. They don't get noticed as calls to action. So make sure that the action that you want the user to take is obvious and front and center, right? Forms. Don't ask for information that you don't really need. And if you actually do need or really want a birthday, make sure you explain out, why you need that birthday, what the user is going to get for giving them personal information, for giving you personal information. Be very careful about that. A lot of times, as marketers, we'll say, well, wouldn't it be great if we had the birthday and where they were born and the color of their car and all this kind of stuff. Well, you got to be real careful about that stuff. You might want to have it, but you're going to probably cut off a lot of engagement and click-throughs if you're asking for too much, especially in sensitive areas. I know this is common. This is kind of common knowledge, but take a look at your site. Take a look at these forms. Take a look at what you're asking, and just test at least, making it a lot simpler, foregoing that information in a test to see if that's the stumbling block. Because a lot of times we find in fields you know, removing some of the actually required information really helps with click-throughs. So these are just some of the things. You know, again, this is all about being an honest broker, being direct, not subtle, being gentle, but direct and firm, and making sure that users know with no uncertain terms that what they came to do, what they came to our site to accomplish, they're able to accomplish. And we want to just avoid those confusions along the way. Let's take a look at just a couple examples here. This first one, we're kind of describing this just kind of fast here, but this was computation platform service provider. They simplified the messaging. They had a whole paragraph on the page describing what they wanted to accomplish. They tested getting rid of that and then being more direct on what was going to be accomplished. Develop solution. Well, develop solution sounds kind of, you know, esoteric, and I'm sure some lofty person with lofty goals had developed solution. But estimate price is really what the user wanted to accomplish with the next step. And it was really what you did. So anyway, they did that. 360% increase in calls to action by simplifying the messaging and having a more direct call to action. Okay, let's look at the next one. This one was about positioning of calls to action, see dates and prices for a educational travel company. They had a multivariate test, and I love these. You can actually, you know, change 3 or 4 different things: the positioning, the colors, the call to action. They did all 3 of these, and they found a more optimum setting for just making things clearer, making things the messaging better. I think there was a color change probably. Let's look at the results. They had a 6% increase in clicks to dates and prices, 5% increase to selected a date and get a quote, 4% increase in bookings. Just having different combinations of things, better positioning, and better messaging. Let's look at one more, and this is a real good one. So this pet supplier, they wanted to boost site engagement. They wanted to actually boost the use of their search. So instead of just having a small search box up in the upper right, they made a much larger search box, which you know, they thought would be front and center and get people to use it more. And they did. Let's look at the results. They did 36% increase in use of search. Unfortunately, their search results needed to be optimized too, because that increase in search dropped revenue per visit by 3% at statistical significance. So be careful what you ask for. The engagement that you seek, make sure you're ready to receive that engagement. And this is another little lesson here. You want to measure, and measure. Don't just measure engagement. Measure the effect on your business KPIs that engagement yielded, right? Because it might not always be what you want. Okay, let's look at some examples. We're gonna go to Jim here, and Jim's gonna show us how we can affect some of these changes within your testing.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for the intro. Hello, everyone. As you know, those who have attended this before, we always like to show a little what we call the test build flow, and show you how you can actually quickly build a campaign within SiteSpect. So we have two cool examples that we're going to show, and we try and keep it relevant to the topics that Paul covered. So we're just going to show how to do a simple swapping out of a hero image. I'm assuming everybody can see my screen okay? Paul, you can see my screen?
Oh yeah, you're good.
Yep.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so the build flow is obviously one of the important things to launching a test. You have to build it first. And SiteSpect it provides this test builder really, and it's really just simply requires these 4 simple steps, right? So there's the general tab, and this is kind of where you give you a campaign a name, you give it metadata, you talk about what it is, maybe your hypothesis. So in this particular example, we're going to replace a generic banner for particular cold weather states, right? So you can, you can make that geo-specific by defining an audience segmentation to show this to, and so forth. So that's basically it, just kind of like metadata. You can control the launching of the test and the state that it's in. You can pause it and things like that from this particular window. So again, that's the general section. And this is kind of the meat and potatoes of the test build. And here what you're looking at are your variations. Okay, so in this particular example, you're looking at 2 variations, right? There's the control group and then the variation group 1. You can have multiple variation groups. And those are the groups that are, that's what's actually going to show to the end user. So in this particular example, what we're doing here, and you can control the split, but basically the default is just split evenly. So if we had 3 variation groups, you'd see 33%, 33%, 33%. In this particular example, we only have 1 variation group. So half the traffic's going to get routed to the original, the other's going to go to the variation group 1. So if we were to take a look at this, and the great thing about SiteSpect too is as you're building these tests, you can literally look and see exactly what you're building and get the look and feel for it and debug it. And you can share the link with people, so you can give it to your QA team, for example, and they can take a look at it. So here you're looking at the control group, right? So just notice the image here in the background, okay? And then let's go into the variation group here, and we'll take a quick look at this one. And what you're going to see is a slightly different image right here. So this is for cold weather states. Now in this particular example, we developed this using the visual editor, right? So this is for developing, quick tests. You're using a visual editor, so you can kind of, hold on just a sec, please. Let me just get this taken care of real quick. And this allows you to just make simple tests like text changes and changing out images and things of that nature, right? So basically what we did here is we just simply highlighted this image, and then we went in to edit the image, and then you can simply go into your image store right here and select whatever images that you want. In this case, it was the winter banner.png. And the nice thing about this too is SiteSpect will import that image for you. So anything done using the visual editor, you can import your own images by just simply selecting it, and it'll bring that in. Okay, so that's the visual editor. All right, now we're going to build another. Now this test we're going to show you is going to accomplish the same thing, but it's actually going to be done a little bit differently. So what we're going to do is we have a different page setup that has a different image, right? So we're going to do a redirect to that page. Now within SiteSpect, there's a couple of ways that you can do redirects, okay? And we have this one called internal, which is what we call an internal URL rewrite. So the user is never actually going to see a different URL. And this is good for a lot of different reasons, such as SEO and things of that nature, right? But it basically accomplishes it a little bit different than a redirect, a straight redirect. So let's just, and again, so now we have 2 variation groups right here, and this one really just shows you, we want to highlight the different types of ways that we can accomplish this, okay? So let's look at the preview here and see what we're looking at. And again, the goal here is to change out the hero image, right? So this one, the visual editor, we actually did it by manipulating the page that's getting served to the end user. In this example, we're actually going to serve a different page. So here you can see that image, right? So let's look at the URL rewrite. And again, if we note right here, note the path, we just have clothing right here on the path, right? So that's basically the default page that it's serving. So in this example, right, what we're going to do, I'll show you what this looks like. We're going to trigger off that same URL path, and that's how we know we're going to fire off this test, right? And what we're doing is we're saying, all right, in that clothing path, we're going to actually put this in. We're going to replace it, and we're going to serve index-02.html as opposed to the index.html, okay? But the cool thing is, like I said earlier, we're going to do an internal redirect, right? So the user's not going to see a change in the URL. So if we preview this change, Okay, I see we have a totally different image right here. So, and we actually, that's a completely different HTML page right there. But as you can see, there's no change to the URL. And just for illustration purposes, we'll do an actual a 302 redirect, right? And in that particular example, you're going to see that same page, the 0.2. But this is a typical classic redirect, right? And now you can see that that's in the page. Now, most people prefer to do internal redirects, right? So that's another way to accomplish that. And then again, you know, just looking at the other things here, you have these for metrics and what you want to track. You have these drag and drop libraries that our PS team helps you create on your initial setup. You can do them on the fly, but we'll create a library and you know, and that's easier for use. And you just simply drag and drop these things right here. And this particular example, our KPI or our key performance indicator is going to be the add to cart button. And when they click that, but you can collect as many metrics, up to 100 different metrics and other things that you might want to measure, right? So that's the metrics library. And then the audience library is similar. And you can make these things default too, so that you can make sure that your team is including the default metrics and the default audiences that you want to see. And then here, example, right? So this is you know, this one here, we're just doing this. The audience is going to be the geography of the U.S. And again, you can drag and drop these things, and you can do, you know, including whitelisting or excluding / blacklisting. So that's it. So I'm going to turn it back to Mike, and I think we're going to open it up for Q&A.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. So let me see here. I'm just going to check the panel. Again, reminder, if for those of you who joined late, if you have any questions, please enter them into the chat box, and we'll try to get all of those answered before we wrap up here. So we got a couple questions. Paul, I think this one might be for you. Many sites are geared towards getting a user on and off a site quickly with a dollar transaction of some sort. What do you advise to media and content type companies that are actually trying to keep users on the site longer?
So that's a good question. Great question. So relevant content is generally what we strive for. And the key to that is personalization. So you want to get information. For one thing, you want to discover all the information you know about the user when they come in, and you can know a lot about them based on where they live, where they came from, what other interests, and if they've been to your site before. And then, as soon as they're on your site, you want to discover as best you can what they may be interested in and present them with relevant content. Autoplay content is always a good way to get started, but always have more relevant content for them based on a personalization scheme to keep them on site.
Great, thanks. I got another couple questions here. This next one says, do the companies you work with find that geography, gender, culture, et cetera, impact click-through?
Absolutely. Again, it has to do with relevancy. We have several clients that have personalization schemes that are geographic based. Obvious language for one, and for another one is really important as well. Again, it's discovering who the user is and presenting them with the appropriate language, the appropriate currency, the appropriate feeling, if possible, if that is possible. Color schemes vary by country as well. And, you know, again, you can target certain users based on their geography. And you can flavor their site based on that. But then also within any test that you're doing, whether it has anything to do with geography or not, you can tailor any variation based on geography. So given a variation, if you want to test a certain call to action, say, whether it's language or whether it's culture, you can tailor a certain test based on geography. So we see that done a lot as well.
Great, thanks. We got one last question, probably time for one last question. We're probably about a minute over, so we got to wrap up soon. I want to try to get this person's question in. This one says, we've only recently assembled a formal optimization team. You covered a lot of the tricks of the trade in your presentation today, and thank you. Are there other things that are sort of widely known relative to terminology, such as learn more works better than get more info or things of that nature?
learn more. Can you read that part again?
If I'm to summarize it, I think it's are there other common tricks of the trade? I guess the recipients kind of they've just
So yeah, let me put it this way. A couple things that come to mind. It's all about the user journey. So we're all about trying to understand the story, and then how does that story change when we make a variation, we enter a variation somewhere. We all think we understand our sites, and we all think we understand our users, and that's part of the problem, because we don't. Being able to measure that journey from landing page to thank you page, no matter what's in between, every single step between landing page and thank you page, we want to understand what the user is doing. And at SiteSpect, we encourage a liberal use of measurement because of the nature of our tool. We're able to measure many things freely without any impact to your site. So understanding how the journey changes, whether search is better or browse is better, or whether they fell off here or they made it all the way to here, you get to see you get to triangulate the all the different possibilities. You get to actually see the user's journey change in 3 dimensions that way. And so really heavy measurement and heavy understanding the nuances of how the story changes will help you understand your user, help you understand your site, and help you better have those 2 things meet in the middle and be successful for both of their goals.
Well, thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you have additional questions or your question didn't get answered, or if you want any further information on today's topic or SiteSpect in general, please feel free to email us at info@sitespect.com. That's info@sitespect.com. Other than that, we wish you and your family continued safety and good health. Have a great day.